Hello again. 50 years ago, just as today, there were politicians in the Labour Party and the Conservatives who were bitterly opposed to each other politically. The same was true of those belonging to smaller parties. Former Prime Minister Edward Heath could hardly have held different views than those which one-time Chancellor of the Exchequer Denis Healey espoused. Similarly, Anthony Wedgwood Benn, or Tony Benn as he later styled himself, was utterly different in his views from Enoch Powell. And yet, these four men, so very different politically, had something in common, something which ran a lot deeper than mere politics or ideology. They all of them had served in the armed forces during the Second World War. Heath and Denis Healey both fought in Europe as artillerymen. Ben was in the RAF and Enoch Powell was a brigadier in India. Whatever their political differences might have been, all four of them had a fierce patriotism and intense love of their country, which resulted from being born and bred in Britain to families with their roots here, and then having fought on behalf of their country. How very different is the case with some of the leading politicians of our day. One thinks of former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, whose parents were born in Africa, his grandparents in India, and he himself was actually registered as an American resident paying taxes in the United States while holding the office of Chancellor of the Exchequer. One thinks too of Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy, who speaks of "we West Indians," of the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, who didn't come to live in this country until she had left school, whose parents are from Africa and for whom English is not her first language, and also of Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, whose parents were both born in Pakistan and who grew up in Saudi Arabia. Tell me now, does anybody watching this seriously believe that the patriotism those four modern politicians claim to feel can possibly compare even remotely to that of Edward Heath and Denis Healey? Seriously? These are people whose parents cheerfully abandoned their own countries in search of better opportunities. Is it really likely that knowing how little attachment their own parents had to the country of their birth will not have had any effect upon how they themselves feel now about this country? The reason I mention this is because Britain is in a terrible state now, and unless firm and decisive action is taken soon, the country will be altogether lost. There never was a more urgent need to have people at the helm of the ship of state who care passionately about this country and are prepared, like the MPs of a few years ago, to sacrifice their lives for Britain if the need arose. Can anybody imagine Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch doing that? I certainly cannot. And if during the current crisis we do not have men in charge who feel that strongly about this country, then of course the decisions the present proper politicians are likely to make will be actuated by self-interest or greed rather than devotion to their nation. They have no unifying culture, no common thread, no object other than personal ambition. We know that both Heath and Healey, as well as Ben and Powell, were ready to make the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of their country, and that willingness to die in defence of their homeland could not fail to have left a mark upon them and influence all that they did subsequently in a political sense. Look around at the MPs we now have, both Labour and Tory, and ask yourself if you can really imagine that any of them love this country enough to sacrifice anything at all for it, let alone their own lives.